Ethan and Lauren had been the kind of couple that everyone envied, at least, they were at the start. Their relationship seemed like the perfect mix of youthful passion and thrilling adventures. They first crossed paths at a summer barbecue 2 years ago. Ethan's calm and composed nature had been a stark but intriguing contrast to Lauren's fiery, animated energy. Within a year of meeting, they tied the knot, full of excitement and hope for the life they were about to build together. But now, just a year and a half into their marriage, things had shifted, and not in a good way. Ethan, a naturally gentle and considerate man, spent long hours working at a local accounting firm. He still tried to nurture their relationship with little acts of kindness, leaving her sweet notes on the fridge or planning quiet evenings at home. In the past, these gestures would bring out Lauren's radiant smile and affectionate laughter. But lately, no matter what he did, it seemed like nothing could make her happy. Lauren, always the passionate and impulsive one, had started picking arguments over things that left Ethan feeling utterly confused. "You don't even follow me on social media, Ethan. It's like you don't care about me anymore," she blurted out one evening while they were making dinner together. Ethan sighed, his voice calm but tired. "Lauren, I'm literally here with you every single day. Isn't that what matters most?" But Lauren wasn't willing to let it drop. "If you truly loved me, you'd want to see everything I share. Why don't you want to be a part of my life?" Another time, it was his friends. "You said you'd spend time with me," she accused when Ethan mentioned a Saturday golf game with his buddies. "But clearly, they're more important than I am." Ethan tried to reason with her, explaining how normal it was to have time for friends and hobbies. But instead of understanding, his words only seemed to pour fuel on her frustration. Even minor slip-ups, like forgetting to take out the trash, became grounds for an argument. "You're doing it on purpose just to get under my skin." And then came the accusation that hurt the most. "Are you cheating on me, Ethan? Is that why you've been acting so distant?" The accusation hit him like a punch to the gut, not because it was true, but because it was so far removed from reality. Ethan found himself emotionally drained from trying to defend himself against something he hadn't done. He proposed solutions, weekend getaways, more quality time, even couples counseling. But Lauren dismissed his efforts with a casual wave of her hand. "Everything's fine," she'd say dismissively, only for another argument to erupt the next day. When things got particularly heated, Lauren would storm out, heading either to her sister's place or out with her friends. Ethan would sit alone in their eerily quiet house, wondering how their once bright happiness had faded into this tense, exhausting cycle. The fights became so routine that Ethan started to see a pattern he couldn't break. And just when he thought things might finally settle, Lauren would throw out the dreaded word, divorce. "Maybe we're just not meant to be," she'd say through tears during an argument, leaving Ethan to wonder if she meant it. Yet by the next morning, it was like nothing had happened, and they'd fall back into their strained version of normalcy. Ethan had always been patient, but the emotional roller coaster was wearing him thin. He loved Lauren deeply and was committed to saving their marriage, but more and more, he felt like he was the only one fighting for it. One evening, yet another argument started in the same way they all seemed to, over something trivial that quickly escalated. This time, it was about Ethan forgetting to fix a loose hinge on the cabinet door. To Lauren, it symbolized something much larger. "You never listen to me, Ethan," she exclaimed, her voice sharp and trembling with frustration. Sitting on the edge of their worn-out couch, Ethan rubbed his temples, trying to maintain his composure. "Lauren, it's not that I don't listen. I've just had a lot on my plate this week. I promise I'll get to it tomorrow." "Tomorrow?" Lauren shot back, pacing the room. "That's always your excuse. Maybe I'm done waiting for tomorrow. Maybe I'm done with this whole marriage." Ethan stood up, his voice firmer now. "Lauren, stop. This isn't really about a cabinet hinge, is it? You're upset, but you're not even giving me a chance to make things right." The word divorce hung unspoken in the air between them, like a storm cloud ready to break. Ethan hated how often it had surfaced lately, as if it were a weapon Lauren wielded when things didn't go her way. Taking a deep breath to steady himself, he tried once again to hold the conversation together. "Look, I love you, but we can't keep living this way. We need to figure this out," I said, trying to keep my voice steady even though I felt like I was teetering on the edge. For a moment, Lauren's usual sharpness seemed to falter. Her shoulders slumped a little, and her gaze softened. "You think therapy could help?" she asked hesitantly, her tone a mix of doubt and curiosity. "I do," I replied, keeping my voice gentle but firm. "A family therapist might help us learn how to actually talk to each other, to understand what's going wrong. I want to fix this, Lauren. I want us to work." She looked down, chewing on her bottom lip, clearly torn. "Maybe you're right," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. Then she hesitated before adding, "But I don't know if I'm ready for that yet." I exhaled slowly, trying to mask my frustration. "Then what are you ready for?" I asked, my words carrying equal parts exhaustion and hope. Lauren's expression shifted suddenly, as though a light had switched on in her mind. Her face brightened, and she practically lit up with an idea. "I need a break," she declared, her voice tinged with excitement. "A chance to reset. Hannah and Natalie have been talking about taking a girls' trip to Europe for months now. Maybe I could go with them, take some time to think, to clear my head." I blinked, caught completely off guard. "A trip to Europe? You're serious?" "Why not?" she said with growing determination. "I've always dreamed of seeing Paris, Rome, Barcelona. This could be exactly what I need, what we need." The thought unsettled me. This wasn't the kind of break I'd envisioned, but if it could help us, I didn't want to stand in her way. "How long would you be gone?" I asked cautiously. "Just 12 days, she answered quickly, as if trying to reassure me. "It's not that long, right? And I'll keep in touch the whole time, I promise." I frowned, still uneasy. "You really think this will make things better?" Lauren nodded, her enthusiasm slightly tempered by uncertainty. "I do. I think it'll give us some space to breathe, to figure things out without all this tension hanging over us." Despite my reservations, I agreed. If Lauren believed this would help, I owed it to her, and to our marriage, to give it a chance. The days before she left passed in a blur of planning and anticipation, at least on her end. She spent hours chatting with Hannah and Natalie, giggling over itineraries and must-see landmarks. Meanwhile, I tried to be supportive, though I couldn't shake the gnawing anxiety growing inside me. On the morning of her flight, I offered to drive her to the airport, but she refused. "I need to do this by myself," she said, avoiding eye contact. "It's not that I don't want you there, I just need the space, Ethan." Her words stung, but I forced a nod. "Okay," I said quietly, swallowing the bitter taste of rejection. Standing by the door with her suitcase, Lauren turned to me and smiled, a bright, almost carefree smile that felt oddly out of place. "This is going to be good for us," she said with a confidence I didn't share. "Trust me." I mustered a weak smile in return, trying to suppress the knot of suspicion twisting in my chest. "I hope so," I replied. "Just, stay in touch, okay?" "I will," she promised, leaning in to press a quick kiss on my cheek. And with that, she was gone, leaving the house quieter than I'd ever known it to be. I stood at the window, watching the car disappear down the street. My heart felt heavier than I cared to admit. Just 12 days, I whispered to myself. It'll go by fast. At first, I tried to convince myself everything was fine. For the first 2 days, Lauren responded to my messages, but her texts were short and lacked any real warmth. When I asked about her trip, her replies were mechanical, "It's fine," or "busy, lots to see." There was no excitement, no vivid details about the sights she was seeing or the experiences she was having. It felt more like she was fulfilling an obligation than sharing her adventure with me. By the third day, the silence from Lauren stretched longer than Ethan had expected. His texts went unanswered, his calls went straight to voicemail. He told himself that she was probably just caught up in the whirlwind of sightseeing, too busy to check her phone. But by the fifth day, that excuse felt paper-thin, and a heavy unease began settling in his chest like a lead weight. To take his mind off things, Ethan turned to social media, hoping to catch a glimpse of her trip. Lauren had posted a handful of photos, snapshots of iconic landmarks, charming cafes, and cobblestone streets. The images were beautiful, but something about them felt distant, like they lacked her usual spark. There wasn't a single selfie or candid picture of her with Hannah and Natalie. It struck Ethan as odd, but he tried to brush it off. Maybe she was just soaking in the experience, too busy to worry about capturing every moment. Still, his curiosity wouldn't let it rest. He decided to check Hannah's and Natalie's profiles. Hannah, who normally flooded her feed with updates, had posted only a couple of pictures in the first few days. Natalie, however, had been more active, sharing glimpses of their trip. It was one of Natalie's posts that stopped Ethan cold. A photo of a lively piazza at sunset showed Hannah and Natalie smiling for the camera, but in the corner, half hidden, were the unmistakable hands of two men. Ethan felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He told himself not to jump to conclusions, they were in Europe, after all. It wasn't unusual to meet new people on a trip like this. But the image stuck with him, and with every passing hour of silence from Lauren, his unease grew. Determined to get answers, Ethan kept scrolling through Natalie's profile. After some digging, he came across a video she'd posted. His pulse quickened as he hit play. The clip was shaky, clearly recorded in the middle of a bustling restaurant. The camera panned over a table where the three women sat, joined by three men. Laughter and the clinking of glasses filled the background. Ethan froze the video when he spotted Lauren. Though the footage was blurry, he could recognize her instantly. She was seated next to a tall man with dark hair, leaning slightly toward him, her face lit with laughter. Hannah and Natalie were similarly paired off, looking relaxed and carefree. Before Ethan could take it all in, the video vanished. Natalie had deleted it. His hands trembled as he hurried to save a screenshot from his phone's gallery, preserving the moment he couldn't unsee. For hours, Ethan stared at that screenshot. It wasn't definitive proof of anything, but it told him enough. Lauren hadn't gone on just a girl's trip. There was more to this, and her silence, now dragging into its fourth day, spoke louder than words. By the eighth day, Ethan stopped trying to contact her altogether. Each unread text and unanswered call felt like a slap in the face, and he couldn't take the humiliation anymore. Instead, he turned his thoughts inward, facing a hard truth: their marriage was crumbling. Whatever Lauren was doing, wherever she was, it was clear that she wasn't invested in fixing what was broken between them. He began preparing himself for the inevitable. He still loved Lauren, but love couldn't blind him to the lies, the avoidance, and the secrets. He started imagining the conversation they'd have when she got back, how he would stay calm and composed, how he'd demand the truth without turning it into a shouting match. He didn't want a dramatic confrontation, he wanted closure. But just as Ethan was steeling himself for that conversation, something unexpected happened. On the eighth day, Lauren's social media sprang back to life. She flooded her feed with bright, cheerful photos of new cities and landmarks. They were stunning images of her trip, full of color and vibrancy. Yet something felt off. Hannah and Natalie had gone completely silent. No tags, no group pictures, no playful comments back and forth. It was as though Lauren had suddenly started traveling alone. Ethan's gut told him something wasn't right. Lauren's sudden burst of activity felt more like a cover-up than a genuine update. And the fact that she still wasn't responding to his messages only deepened his suspicion. What exactly was she hiding? Sitting alone in the quiet stillness of their house, Ethan stared at his phone, a storm of anger and heartbreak swirling inside him. For days, he had been holding back, unwilling to pull anyone else into his private relationship troubles. But by the next morning, his restraint gave way. Swallowing his pride, he finally decided to call Hannah. It took 3 attempts before she answered. His heart raced as he heard her voice. "Hello?" she said, her tone strained, lacking its usual cheerfulness. Ethan cleared his throat, trying to sound casual. "Hi, Hannah, it's Ethan. Hope I'm not catching you at a bad time." There was a noticeable pause before she replied. "Oh, Ethan. No, it's fine. How are you?" "Fine," he lied, gripping his phone tighter. I haven't heard from Lauren in a while. I thought maybe you could let me know how things are going over there." Hannah hesitated, her response deliberate. "Oh, everything's fine. You know how it is, traveling can get hectic. Lauren's probably just caught up in all the sightseeing and hasn't had time to check her phone." Ethan didn't buy it. "She hasn't replied in days, Hannah. Is everything really okay?" There was a nervous laugh on the other end of the line. Yeah, it's totally fine. We've just had a few hiccups, almost got robbed in Italy, and the weather's been awful. Especially in Germany, it's freezing here, Ethan. And the time difference makes it tricky to keep up with everyone." Ethan's frown deepened. Something about her rushed tone felt off, like she was fumbling for excuses. Then, faintly in the background, he picked up noises that didn't fit, voices speaking English, the hum of a copier, and the unmistakable ding of a microwave. It sounded like an office, not a bustling European city. "Germany, huh?" Ethan said, testing her. "That's quite a ways from Paris. Are you all still traveling together?" Hannah's voice tightened. "Yeah, of course. Lots of moving around. Look, Ethan, I'd love to chat more, but I'm really busy right now. Can we catch up when we get back?" Before he could get another word in, Hannah abruptly ended the call. Ethan stared at the screen, his unease hardening into certainty. Hannah wasn't in Europe anymore. The sounds in the background, her evasive answers, it all pointed to one conclusion: she was already back. Unable to sit still, Ethan grabbed his keys and drove across town to Hannah's house. Parking a few houses away to avoid being seen, he settled in to wait. The minutes dragged on, stretching into hours as he kept his eyes on her quiet street. Just as the evening began to take on its golden glow, Hannah's car pulled into the driveway. Ethan ducked down in his seat, his heart sinking as he watched her step out. She was dressed casually, her hair pulled back, holding a takeout bag in one hand. She looked tired but relaxed, not like someone fresh off an international flight. As she disappeared inside her home, Ethan sat in stunned silence. His worst fears were being confirmed, one piece at a time. If Hannah was back, where was Lauren? And why hadn't she said anything? Questions raced through his mind, each more troubling than the last. He briefly considered confronting Hannah on the spot but decided against it. There was no guarantee she'd tell him the truth, and he didn't want to reveal just how much he suspected. Driving home, Ethan's thoughts spiraled. It was now the 9th day of Lauren's trip, yet Hannah was already home. Something wasn't adding up. Gritting his teeth, Ethan vowed to get to the bottom of this mess. "Lauren and I are going to have a serious talk," he muttered to himself. The next day, Lauren finally broke her silence with a text. She claimed she was fine, just busy. Ethan bit back the anger rising in his chest and played it cool, responding with calm, measured replies. He needed to keep his composure for now. On the 11th day, Lauren finally called. Ethan answered on the first ring, his voice steady even as tension simmered beneath the surface. "Hey, Lauren," he said, masking the frustration building inside him. Lauren's jaw dropped as though I'd slapped her, and for a moment, she simply stared at me, her expression a mix of shock and outrage. Then, the anger bubbled to the surface, contorting her face. "You want a DNA test, she snapped, her voice rising. Ethan, how could you even think that? After everything we've been through? You're accusing me of cheating. Her reaction was explosive, but I had been bracing myself for it. I stayed rooted where I stood, my arms crossed tightly over my chest. I'm not accusing you of anything, Lauren, I said, doing my best to keep my voice calm, though every word felt heavy with the weight of my suspicions. I'm saying I need clarity, we need clarity. A DNA test will clear up everything, and we can move forward without any doubts. Doubts? She repeated, her voice cracking. You think I've been unfaithful, don't you? That's why you're asking for this. Do you have any idea how insulting that is? I've been carrying your child, Ethan, and this is how you treat me. Her words stung, but I refused to back down. Lauren, listen to me. I'm not trying to hurt you or accuse you unfairly. But I can't ignore the signs, the silence, the strange behavior, Hannah being back early. Something doesn't add up, and I can't just pretend everything's fine. Her eyes flashed with anger, and she took a step closer, pointing a finger at me. So you've been spying on me? Following my friends? That's disgusting, Ethan. You've twisted everything in your head to make me the villain. I took a deep breath, willing myself to stay calm. Lauren, I didn't spy on anyone. I called Hannah because I was worried about you, and what I found out didn't match what you told me. That's why I'm asking for the test, not to punish you, but because I need to know the truth. She let out a bitter laugh, shaking her head. The truth? You want the truth? Fine, Ethan. Here it is. I've been feeling sick and overwhelmed, and instead of supporting me, you're accusing me of the worst thing imaginable. You've already made up your mind about me, haven't you? No, I said firmly, my voice rising slightly. I haven't made up my mind. That's why I'm asking for the test, Lauren. It's the only way to put this to rest. She stood there, staring at me, her chest heaving with the effort to hold back tears, or maybe more anger. Finally, she spoke, her voice icy and sharp. You want your damn DNA test? Fine. But when it comes back and proves this child is yours, don't you dare expect me to forgive you for this. Don't expect me to forget that you didn't trust me when I needed you the most. She stormed past me, yanking her suitcase along as she disappeared down the hallway. I stood frozen, my heart pounding, the echoes of her words ringing in my ears. I knew I had crossed a line, but deep down, I also knew I couldn't have stayed silent. Whatever came next, there was no turning back now. Divorce? Are you kidding me? You're accusing me of cheating and threatening to end our marriage just because I'm pregnant? Lauren's voice cracked as she shouted, her face flushed with rage. Ethan, you've completely lost your mind. No, Ethan replied, his tone icy and measured. I've been watching and listening, Lauren. You went silent for days, Hannah lied about being in Europe, and I saw the video Natalie posted, the one she deleted right after. Something happened, and you've been covering it up. Lauren's fists clenched at her sides, her anger palpable. That's ridiculous. You're paranoid, Ethan. You're making this up in your head because you can't deal with your own insecurities. Ethan drew a deep breath, his expression hardening. I'm done playing games, Lauren. If this child is mine, I'll be there for them, every step of the way. But I won't stay in this marriage if there's no trust. The DNA test is happening, and that's final. For a moment, Lauren's confidence wavered. Her expression flickered between anger, fear, and something Ethan couldn't quite pinpoint. When she spoke again, her voice was shrill, desperate. Your suspicions are completely baseless, she shouted. Yes, Hannah came back early, but that was my decision. I told her to keep it from you because I knew you'd blow this out of proportion, just like you're doing now. Ethan folded his arms, his gaze as cold as steel. And the video, Lauren? The one with you and those men? What about that? Lauren's eyes darted nervously for a split second before she regained her composure, her tone turning defensive. For God's sake, Ethan, they were just some locals we met at a cafe. They were curious about where we were from, and we chatted for a couple of hours, nothing more. Nothing more, Ethan echoed, pulling out his phone and showing her the screenshot. This doesn't look like casual conversation, Lauren. And it certainly doesn't scream, girls' trip. Her face hardened, her tone dripping with disdain. You have no proof, Ethan. None. This is all in your head. You're scared of change, scared of responsibility, and now you're making me the villain to justify your fear. Ethan's jaw tightened as his patience wore thin. Don't insult my intelligence, Lauren. You've been distant, dodging my calls, ignoring my messages, and spinning one story after another. I see through it, and I'm done pretending everything's fine. Lauren threw her arms up in exasperation, her frustration spilling over. Oh my God, Ethan. Who did I even marry? You're acting like some insecure, controlling husband who can't handle his wife having a little freedom. And now you want to accuse me of cheating? You'll regret this. Ethan's voice remained steady, though the weight of his words was undeniable. What I regret is putting my trust in you when you didn't deserve it. Your lies, your manipulations, they've been abusive, Lauren. This marriage is over. For a fleeting moment, Lauren's expression crumpled as if his words had struck her to her core. But just as quickly, her face twisted with defiance, her eyes burning with fury. Divorce? You're throwing everything away over your fragile ego, she spat, pointing at him accusingly. Yes, we've fought, but I thought you were better than this. I thought you could handle stepping up and being a real partner. Step up. Ethan retorted, his voice rising for the first time. This isn't about stepping up, Lauren. It's about facing reality. Either you're lying to manipulate me, or that child isn't mine. Take your pick. Lauren's eyes filled with tears, her voice breaking as she screamed, You'll regret this, Ethan. You're destroying everything we've built. She stormed toward the door, dragging her suitcase behind her. Just before leaving, she turned back, her voice sharp and icy. If you don't apologize by tomorrow, you can get out of this house. I'm not going to let you stress me out and risk this pregnancy. You've got until morning. The door slammed behind her, leaving Ethan standing in the deafening silence of their home. He didn't wait for morning. Without hesitation, he grabbed a bag, stuffed in his essentials, and left the house. He wasn't going to apologize, and he wasn't going to play her games anymore. For the first time in weeks, he felt like he was taking control of his life again. The motel room was modest, with plain walls and a creaky bed, but to Ethan, it was a welcome retreat from the suffocating atmosphere of his home. For the first time in days, the silence around him felt like peace rather than tension. The next morning, Ethan met with a lawyer. Sitting across from the sharp-eyed professional, he laid out the chaos of the past few weeks, recounting every detail, the ignored calls, the strange behavior, the video, and, finally, Lauren's dramatic announcement. The lawyer listened intently, occasionally nodding as he jotted down notes. When Ethan finished, the lawyer leaned back in his chair and spoke calmly. It seems like you've already made up your mind. I have, Ethan replied without hesitation. There's no going back after all this. I can't stay in this marriage. When Lauren discovered that Ethan had filed for divorce, her shock quickly turned to rage. That evening, her call came in, and her voice was sharp enough to cut through steel. You think you can just walk away from me like this, she spat. You're not going to ruin my life, Ethan. I'll fight you every step of the way. Fight all you want, Ethan said, his tone cold and resolute. This marriage is over, and I'll get the truth about that child whether you like it or not. Lauren didn't take his words lightly. In the days that followed, she launched what felt like an all-out war. Ethan's phone lit up constantly with her messages, some tearful and apologetic, others filled with venomous threats. She reached out to mutual friends, painting a picture of Ethan as a cruel and controlling husband who couldn't handle the idea of becoming a father. The accusations didn't stop there. Lauren hinted at taking legal action to keep the house, insisting it was in the best interest of her unborn child. Her campaign extended far beyond their personal circle. Lauren's family and close friends rallied around her, amplifying her claims. They spread rumors, twisting the narrative to make Ethan the villain. Whispers circulated that he was terrified of responsibility, fleeing from the reality of fatherhood. Strangers in their shared social circle began looking at Ethan with judgment, their eyes filled with suspicion and disapproval. Even as he faced public scrutiny, Ethan held firm to his beliefs. The pregnancy felt like either a manipulation or a result of unfaithfulness, and his suspicions about Lauren's behavior during her European trip gnawed at him like an open wound. Still, the weight of the accusations bore down on him, making every day feel like a battle just to defend himself. When the case finally reached the courtroom, Ethan was confronted with the truth he had been dreading: Lauren was indeed pregnant. He had held on to the faint hope that it might have been a ploy or a misunderstanding, but the medical evidence didn't lie. She was expecting a child. For Ethan, this revelation didn't end the fight, it marked the beginning of an even more intense battle. His lawyer didn't waste any time raising questions about the paternity of the child. They pointed to the timing of Lauren's pregnancy, arguing that it didn't align with the sparse moments of intimacy during their marriage. They highlighted the long stretches of conflict and estrangement, suggesting that Lauren's infidelity during her trip to Europe couldn't be ruled out. Lauren's legal team was ready for this line of attack. They presented their own case, portraying Ethan as an emotionally distant and neglectful husband who had failed to support his wife. Witnesses, Lauren's friends and family, took the stand, testifying about Ethan's supposed reluctance to embrace fatherhood. They painted him as a man afraid of responsibility, someone who had emotionally abandoned his wife long before the trip to Europe. The courtroom buzzed with tension as both sides fought to sway the narrative. Lauren's team worked tirelessly to frame her as a victim, an innocent, loving wife betrayed by a husband who couldn't handle the reality of their growing family. Ethan, meanwhile, was cast as an arrogant and neglectful spouse, a man who had failed to live up to the responsibilities of marriage and impending parenthood. Ethan sat quietly through it all, his expression unreadable, even as the weight of the accusations pressed down on him. Inside, however, his determination burned stronger than ever. He knew the truth was out there, and he wasn't going to stop until he found it. The fallout from the DNA results was both a relief and a fresh wave of frustration for Ethan. He had spent months battling suspicion, public judgment, and Lauren's manipulations, only to find his worst fears confirmed. The child wasn't his. It should have been the closure he needed, but instead, it opened a floodgate of anger and resentment. Lauren's initial shock quickly spiraled into desperation. "There's no way this is true," she insisted, pacing her lawyer's office while Ethan sat silently across the table. "The lab must have made a mistake. Ethan, we need to have it checked again." Ethan's patience, already stretched thin, snapped. "Go ahead, Lauren," he said coldly. "Test it 100 times if that makes you feel better. The results won't change. And neither will my decision." Lauren's eyes brimmed with tears as she clutched the test results in trembling hands. "I don't understand," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I was faithful. I swear I was faithful. This has to be wrong." But Ethan wasn't interested in her protestations anymore. "The test doesn't lie, Lauren. I don't care what story you tell yourself, but I'm done listening to your lies." True to her word, Lauren demanded a retest, determined to prove the first result wrong. Ethan complied without argument. He wanted the second test as much as she did, if only to erase any remaining doubt. When the results came back weeks later, they confirmed what the first test had already made clear: Ethan was not the father. Lauren crumpled under the weight of the undeniable truth. She sobbed openly, clutching the paper like it was the last thread of her crumbling reality. "I don't understand," she kept repeating, her voice hoarse and desperate. "I don't know how this happened. I know it's yours, Ethan. I know it." But Ethan's resolve had hardened. "It's not," he replied flatly, standing from the table and gathering his things. "And I'm done, Lauren. There's nothing left to say." Lauren tried to explain, her words tumbling over one another in a chaotic mess. She spoke of timelines, of confusion, of some impossible mistake. But Ethan had heard enough. Whatever the explanation, it didn't matter anymore. The marriage was over, and he wasn't going to let her drag him back into her web of lies and half-truths. The court finalized their divorce shortly after the second test results were submitted. Ethan felt a strange mix of liberation and emptiness as he walked out of the courtroom for the last time. The battle was finally over, but the scars it had left ran deep. Lauren, stripped of her claims and exposed in court, faded into the background of Ethan's life. Her family and friends, once so eager to defend her, quietly retreated. The rumors about Ethan, though damaging at the time, gradually lost their sting as the truth came out. He wasn't the villain, he was the man who had fought to protect his dignity and find the truth in a sea of lies. Ethan moved forward cautiously, focusing on rebuilding his life piece by piece. The experience had left him weary and guarded, but it had also taught him a painful but valuable lesson: trust is fragile, and once broken, it's almost impossible to mend. As for Lauren, her final words still echoed in his mind from time to time. "I don't understand," she had said. Ethan supposed she never would. And maybe, he thought, that was punishment enough. With the DNA results proving his suspicions true, Ethan felt an overwhelming sense of liberation. The finality of the divorce brought closure, ensuring Lauren no longer had any claim to his life, property, or future. But Ethan wasn't content to let the damage she had inflicted go unanswered. The months of slander, the lies that had tainted his reputation, those wounds needed to be addressed. Ethan filed a defamation lawsuit against Lauren and her family, targeting the baseless rumors they had spread about him. The claims that he was a cowardly and neglectful husband had tarnished his name, and he was determined to set the record straight. With the DNA results as undeniable evidence, his case was strong. The lawsuit sent ripples through Lauren's support network. Her once loyal defenders began to retreat as the truth came to light. In court, her family's falsehoods were exposed, and the lies unraveled. Friends who had stood by Lauren's side distanced themselves, unwilling to be associated with her deceit. Though the legal battle dragged on, Ethan eventually emerged victorious. The court awarded him damages for the harm to his reputation, and Lauren was forced to issue a public apology. 2 years later, Ethan's life was unrecognizable from the turmoil he had endured. He had moved to a new city, started fresh in a new job, and even ventured back into the world of dating. For the first time in years, he felt truly at peace, free from the lingering weight of betrayal. One sunny afternoon, while running errands, Ethan stepped into a coffee shop and unexpectedly came face to face with Natalie. The sight of her stirred memories he had long tried to bury. Natalie seemed uneasy, her nervous energy palpable. "Ethan," she began after some polite small talk, her voice trembling slightly. "I owe you an apology. I've been carrying this for years, and I need to say it." Ethan tilted his head, curiosity and caution mingling. "An apology? For what?" Natalie sighed, glancing around as if afraid someone might overhear. "I should have told you the truth back then. About Lauren." Ethan's expression darkened. "What truth?" Natalie hesitated, then took a deep breath. "Lauren had a lover. She went to Europe with him, not just us. Hannah and I knew about it, but she begged us not to say anything. We thought it wasn't our place." Ethan's stomach tightened, though he kept his composure. "So the trip wasn't just a girl's vacation?" he asked, his voice low and steady. "No," Natalie admitted, guilt flashing in her eyes. "She'd been seeing this guy for a while. We didn't know she was pregnant, though. She must have assumed the baby was yours. Ethan felt a surge of vindication, but it was tempered by frustration. Why tell me this now? He asked, his tone sharp but controlled. Natalie looked down, fidgeting with her coffee cup. Because it's been eating away at me. You didn't deserve what happened, and I guess I needed to clear my conscience. Ethan nodded slowly, his emotions simmering beneath the surface. Thanks for telling me, he said after a moment. But honestly, I'm not surprised. I already knew who Lauren was, and I've moved on. They exchanged brief goodbyes, and Ethan walked out of the coffee shop feeling lighter. The truth Natalie had revealed didn't hit him as hard as he thought it might. Instead, it affirmed what he had known deep down all along: he had made the right decision to leave Lauren behind. As he stepped back into the sunlight, Ethan felt an overwhelming sense of closure. The shadows of betrayal that had loomed over him for so long were finally gone. For the first time, the past felt like just that, the past. With a renewed sense of clarity and hope, Ethan looked forward to a future that was entirely his own.